Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. Why haven't I got my green screen up today? That's a good question. Virtual background. Hopefully that should sort it out. Right, I'm still having stuttering problems. Let me just check one thing. I'll be back at the screen in 1 second. Get off the screen. No. All right, I'm still getting problems with the connection. I'm on super fast broadband. It's on Ethernet. Done everything I've been told to do, and it's still not working. I'm still getting stuttering problems. Let me know if you can hear the words coming over. Drop me a line quickly in the comment stream, and just let me know if it's clear. I'm seeing a few connection issues at this end, but I cannot hear what I'm saying, whether it's coming over clearly. So if anybody could just drop me a line in the comments and let me know if it's working okay, I will carry on with the show. If not, I'll do what I did the other day and record it. So if somebody right, we've got Kevin has looked in. Are you hearing me clearly this morning, Kevin? Christine says, okay. Yeah, all right. I'm assuming that it is all right. In that case, I shall carry on. The broken connection symbol has disappeared. So hopefully all is good. Right. So after that little hiatus, it's show number 282. Elevenses. It's Wednesday, the 26th of October. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. What have we got for you in today's show? Well, a downed Russian drone has turned out to have a Rotax engine in it, and I'll be looking at that story and where they might have sourced those engines from. Durham police are the latest to have apprehended some bike jackers, or attempted bike jackers anyway. Bennett's BikeSocial, self-builders' biggest bike club in the GB, has joined the National Motorcyclist Council. I'll have a quick look at the possible implications for that too. Following on from my previous talks about the fact that we're unlikely to see anything really dramatic going on with bikes with petrol engines over the next few years, it looks like the 21st anniversary R1 is likely to get a new colour scheme and winglets, whereas the Tracer GT 900 is likely to get adaptive cruise control. But Suzuki have done something a little bit different. They have launched a free crash and theft damage repair scheme. So we'll have a quick look at that. I'll also look at a pair of e-bikes. One is US designed, and it's claimed to be a total rethink of motorcycle design, and I'll show you a 60-year-old design which actually really cuts the ground from under that particular claim. Whereas in India, a lightweight e-bike has just been revealed, quite a pretty little thing, I think, and at a bargain price if I've done my calculations across the currency correctly. And then finally, today's discussion point, I'll be looking again at the need to be somewhere where we can be seen, by looking at the consequences and how badly that can go wrong. So that's today's show. Don't forget, we do have a couple of online talk events coming up. November, Armchair Riding, which is all about the use of sports psychology and specifically visualisation. I think people will find that absolutely fascinating, so do look in on that one. That's Wednesday, the 2nd of November at 8 p.m. Tickets are a £5. and you can catch up on that for some days after the event if you can't get there live. But obviously you can ask me questions if you're live. And then December, we're back with the full presentation of Science of Being Seen, which will include the need to be somewhere where you can be seen. I'll point that out in that particular presentation. That's Wednesday, the 7th of December, which is Pearl Harbor Day, isn't it? That's 8 p.m. And tickets for both those events are £5. And if you want to sign up, you can find the pages for those shows here. I'll just put that up in the comments. So, right, okay, on with the show then. Okay, I've just got the picture missing. Sorry, I'm just trying to do something with a new browser, which I've been advised to use, and it's just not reacting quite the same as I would have hoped. Right, okay, so that should be the right button. Right, that's the events I've just told you about. So do pop along if you can see either of those, but let's move on with the first story. That's not the first story, that's a picture of a motorcycle lying on its side. I thought I had a picture of a drone engine. It's all gone horribly wrong again today. Right, anyway, an investigation is underway after an engine designed by the Austrian company Rotax was discovered installed in an Iranian-made drone that Russia has been using to attack the Ukraine. Now, Rotax is an Austrian subsidiary of the Canadian Bombardier Recreational Products Group, and they are known for building engines which power snowmobiles, watercraft, motorcycles, aircraft, and a significant number of unmanned aerial vehicles. The drone was recovered after it went down in the Black Sea earlier this month. Now, the delivery of such hardware to Iran violates European Union sanctions, which ban the export of items which have a potential civilian and military purpose, such as vehicle parts and obviously engines for drones and micro-light aircraft. And identical sanctions have actually been imposed on Russia too by the EU. So where are the engines actually coming from? Well, one possible source is that they're being stolen from microlight aircraft. It turns out, when I did a bit of reading around, that sophisticated criminals have been circumventing airport security measures and removing engines with low engine hours. And they've been specifically targeting these because similar engines with a high number of engine hours have been left untouched. So many have been stolen in the UK alone that a national intelligence team focusing on organised crime are investigating. It's part of something called Operation Opal. Now, the British Microlight Aircraft Association are working with the Light Aircraft Association to collate information about thefts in the UK as part of this operation. Now, let me just get my picture back up. Investigators in Norway are also looking into what they consider to be organised theft of these Rotax engines. And one thing they pointed out is that they have been very carefully disassembled from planes, not hacked out. So people taking them know exactly what they're doing. And it seems, according to Rotax's own website, that more than 130 Rotax 912, I believe is a twin-cylinder engine, and 6 bigger Rotax 914, which I think is a 4-cylinder motor, light aircraft engines have been stolen worldwide between 2000 and 2021. Now, reports of Rotax engines powering Iranian unmanned air vehicles have existed for some time, specifically these Rotax 912 and 914 variants. And there is a precedence for criminal activity being tied to Iranian drone acquisition. In 2014, for example, 2 Iranian men were actually tried in Frankfurt and charged with smuggling dozens of German-made engines capable of powering drones, not Rotax, I believe, into Iran. And there is also evidence that engines have been cloned in Iran. Rotax and Bombardier issued a media release denying any wrongdoing. And they said, we've been made aware of the alleged use of Rotax engines or counterfeit engines in certain specific situations involving Iranian Mahaja 6 drones in the conflict areas. We're taking this very seriously. BRP, Bombardier Recreational Products, has not authorized and has not given any authorization to its distributors to supply military UAV manufacturers with Iran in Russia. And Rotax say they've launched an investigation. So, right, there we go. Quite an interesting story, that one, I think. So, next story, if I can get the right picture up this morning. Despite all the preparation, it's going a little bit chaotic. So that's the scene in Durham where police reported that the man was allegedly kicked off his motorcycle by a group of teenagers in Newton Aycliffe, and that was on Monday. In what they're treating as an attempted robbery. Once again, the attack happened in broad daylight. It was just after midday. The attempt to steal the bike actually failed, and the teenagers made off from the scene on another bike, also believed to have been stolen in the Northumbria region. And with the help of the police helicopter, though, that particular bike was actually traced and intercepted. The suspects tried to escape on foot, but were chased down and arrested. Fortunately, the victim of the attempted bikejacking was not seriously injured, the report said. Unfortunately, I hope he wasn't injured at all, but hey-ho, there we go. All right, don't forget, if you are had any questions, any comments, anything you want to ask, do drop me a line and I'll do my best to answer as the show goes on. If I can't answer during the show, I will try to get back to you at the end of the show. Now, we do have a couple of comments that have popped up this morning. What have we got? As I said, Christine and Kevin have looked in. Yeah, that's it. The other two are actually mine at the moment. So, what else is going on in the world? Well, you probably have noticed that there have been shenanigans going on in Parliament, and so the latest government reshuffle sees the Right Honourable Mark Harper MP taking over the role of Secretary of State for Transport, whilst the Minister with direct responsibility for roads is, once again, the Right Honourable Baroness Vere of Norbiton. And they replace Anne-Marie Trevelyan and Catherine Fletcher, who were only actually appointed literally just over a month ago by the short-lived Truss administration. So hopefully the department can settle down to getting on with some serious work now. And Richard's looked in. Good morning, Richard. Nice to see you. Now, BikeSocial, the Bennett's insurance social media outlet, they have joined the National Motorcyclist Council, the NMC. The council, which launched back in March 2001, is a coalition of organisations which are said to represent motorcyclists and work together on issues to help influence and change a government policy. The NMC's founding members include the ACU, BMF, IAM, Trail Riders Fellowship, the National Motorcycle Dealers Association, who I think joined later actually, and the Vintage Motorcycle Club. Now, the NMC claimed at their launch that they were going to be able to make an impact on the politics of motorcycle. They also say they have significant connections in government, in parliament, and among a wide range of other organisations. I was a bit skeptical, I'd be quite honest. My earliest criticism of the NMC was that there was no way for ordinary riders to be heard within that organisation. In fact, the NMC actually said it wasn't a forum for the ordinary rider, and they pointed to MAG and the BMF as examples of organisations which directly represent motorcycling. From the motorcyclist's perspective, as opposed to the manufacturer or the other organisations I've just mentioned. Now, my criticism was actually sort of augmented, if you like, because MAG quickly dropped out of the NMC. And frankly, if the council were working with local riders on the Hackney PTW parking plans, which I've been talking about over the last few months, which I believe have now gone live, and so riders in Hackney are having to pay large amounts of money to park their bikes, I didn't see it. Now, BikeSocial claims to be the UK's biggest bike club, and they say they have 100,000 members. And so they say that by joining the NMC, those members will be given a voice. So all I can say is I hope the NMC is actually listening to ordinary riders. Now, don't forget, if you do want to catch up with this show, it goes out on Wednesdays and it goes out on Sundays. It's normally live at 11 o'clock. The last couple of Sundays, I have had streaming problems with the output from the software that I use. Everything seems to check out this end. It seems to be specifically a problem at the streaming end, where the stream is delivered to the either Facebook or YouTube. So it may well be that Sunday's show is either a test run live to see whether it works, or I may just record it and bite the bullet and do it that way. Anyway, you'll have to wait to see until Sunday. But generally speaking, 11 o'clock is when you will find me on air on Wednesdays and Sundays. Right, okay, now I have also talked in a number of occasions in recent shows about the looming death of the petrol engine motorcycle, of course, and I've said that with little point in developing new motorcycles right now, although there are some interesting things coming out from Chinese manufacturers, we can expect to see existing models staying on the books for a while yet and being tarted up to keep them looking fresh. So most sort of new models are likely to be mild upgrades of existing machines. So it's no big surprise, for example, to discover that the Japanese magazine Young Machine, which is frequently a source of official leaks from the factories, is dropping hints that there will be a 25th anniversary model of the R1. It's hard to believe that that bike's 25 years old, really, isn't it? And it will arrive likely with a throwback red and white livery, which is reminiscent of the original machine, and it's likely it will also have the current fad for sports motorcycles, winglets, fitted. The other area which is likely to be exploited for upgrades, as I've also mentioned, are the electronics packages, because once they are developed, they are pretty cheap to fit, and in particular, rider aid systems. Now, initially only found on high-end models, BMW, Ducati, and KTM, for example, have versions of this technology. It's being reported that Yamaha's own rather more affordable Tracer 900 GT is about to be equipped with a radar-based adaptive cruise control for 2023. Now, in the patent that's been seen online, radar only appears at the front, so it doesn't appear that it will come with rearwards or sidewards blind spot warning system. So it will be a fairly basic system, but again, there is that potential for an upgrade later on. And there's also the likelihood that this technology will trickle down model range, because that means that you can then add extra value to bikes that are to sort of differentiate particular models within that range. So my guess is that just as Yamaha have already done by speccing the Tracer 900 GT with remote adjustable suspension, it may not seem like a big deal, but I found that the standard 900 model, trying to get to the adjuster ring was impossible without actually taking the rear wheel out. So I could see why they've done that on the GT model. They must have got a lot of complaints. The GT model, of course, also gets luggage, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that this radar adaptive cruise control actually drops down the model range, and maybe we'll see a GT version of the Tracer 700 in the not too distant future. Now, if you own a Suzuki, there is some good news, because Suzuki have launched a new scheme for you. And I'm just going to put the link up on screen. There it is. And I'll tell you all about it. It's a motorcycle accident aftercare program. And how this works is, if you crash your Suzuki or you have it stolen and recovered in the UK, well, Great Britain, I should say, Suzuki GB wants to help. Now, it's said to be an industry first. It's an entirely free service for all Suzuki customers. So regardless of age of the machine, they aim to make dealing with the aftermath of an accident or a theft as smooth and pain-free as possible. It's said to be an industry first. It's an entirely free service for all Suzuki customers, as I say. Um, and basically, all you need to do is contact the Suzuki First dedicated call center, which is available 24 hours a day, and tell them your woes. And from then on, the program is said to provide riders with a single point of contact. They'll handle the entire claims process, the recovery, the repair. It'll all be done on the owner's behalf, and they'll deal with everything from liaising with insurers and recovering of the bike, right down to getting it actually fixed at an authorized Suzuki dealership using only Suzuki genuine parts. I can see that being a little bit of a problem with some of the older models. So my guess is that possibly there will be an age cut-off on this in the small print. Anyway, no prior sign-up is required, so it should help to remove some of the obstacles in what is sometimes a complicated procedure. I can tell you about my own problems and woes with an incident involving my camper a few years ago when, believe it or not, got run into by my partner's car. Neither of us were in either of the vehicles at the time. Somebody else ran into the back of the Honda and ran that into the back of my Toyota. Most annoying. Anyway, Suzuki basically say that it highlights their commitment to customers past the new motorcycle point of sale. And there's probably a reason for that. If you go and look at the Suzuki range, you'll find there's not much on there to purchase at the moment. The Suzuki range is looking distinctly threadbare. Anyway, Jacob Lewis, who's Suzuki GB's customer retention manager, he commented, "We pride ourselves on our level of after sales care at Suzuki, and I think our customers will agree we put a great deal of effort into things like our Suzuki Service Promise and our Vintage Parts program. Now we're really pleased to be able to further demonstrate our commitment to Suzuki owners with the Suzuki Accident Aftercare program. Sometimes accidents happen, and we know it's how stressful it is managing the fallout, arranging recovery, and dealing with insurance companies." Okay, so there we go. Whilst the service is free, there is really no such thing as a free lunch, so you do have to ask yourself what's in it for Suzuki. Well, of course, it may just bring you back to Suzuki. If you've been thinking about wandering off elsewhere, it may bring you to Suzuki for the first time if you're looking for a bike. And of course, the other thing it does is it brings the insurance repair work back to a Suzuki dealership, and I doubt they'll object from a bit of extra work. Right. Okay. So, I do have a couple of pictures of some motorcycles for you today. So let's just get those up on screen. Have a look at this particular bike here. This is the RIVID Anthem. Now, according to the press blurb, the bike is a total rethinking of how a motorcycle should be built. It lacks a conventional frame and instead uses folded metal to create a lightweight but sturdy box frame. Now, my first thought was that the bike looks a bit like a sports moped from the 70s. My second thought was it looks even more like the DKW 2000 Wankel. That did have a couple of rails running down to the top of the engine, but basically the engine was sort of underslung in that horizontal position on those DKWs from the mid-70s. Go and have a look at them if you've not seen one. Interesting little bikes. And my second thought, of course, was that there is actually nothing new when it comes to a total rethink. Have a look at this particular machine. That is the aerial Arrow from the late 1950s. It's a 250 two-stroke engine there, twin cylinder, suspended from a steel monocoque frame, just like the claimed innovative frame for the RIVID. It's made from pressed steel panels. Now, in this case, they are welded together. But the basic idea that you're using a box section monocoque is exactly the same. Even my Honda Hornet 2002 model, if you lift the tank off, you'll find there's actually a box section spine under the tank rather than the sort of standard tubing. So new, well, not really, I don't think. I mean, I think the you can see the ancestry quite clearly there 60 years ago. Unfortunately, I think it's daft claims like this that actually detract from some of the genuine innovations that we are seeing. Now, again, whilst not new, the bike does get adjustable suspension points and it gets adjustable steering geometry. That's usually something restricted to top of the range sports machinery. Although adjustable steering points are donkey's years old. I can probably go back to the 1950s and find you bikes with adjustable suspension. The report says that by moving them, you can completely change the ride and feel of the machine, but you will need to get the spanners out. And frankly, with adjustable steering, I would be not too happy that riders can actually play around with that without really knowing what they're doing. Yes, you can change the feel of the machine. You could also make it unrideable if you do it wrong. I've certainly had first-hand effect of what an owner can do with just by altering adjustable damping settings on a motorcycle and turn it unrideable. Something that many riders would perhaps enjoy, though, is the adjustable seat. Now, it's not one where, again, you have to get spanners out. It can actually be raised or lowered by a fairly whopping 10 centimetres, actually 4 inches, fully automatically. There's a button on the handlebars that triggers an actuator under the seat, which lifts or lowers it. And this was sold as a bonus point. It can be adjusted on the move, although I'm not quite sure why you'd want to. I would think that once you've found the comfortable setting that works for you, you'd pretty much leave it there. Although it would work brilliantly, of course, on a rental bike where lots of different people are going to be riding it at different heights, even on a school's training machine where we have to cope with different riders of different sizes. That would be definitely a bonus. Anyway, I can't think of another motorcycle that has a seat that can be adjusted on the move, so maybe the designers really are justified in claiming that this is an industry first. Performance-wise, it's right up there on the money for the now fairly standard commuter e-bike model. Roughly 125 level of performance, 13.5 kilowatt motor with a 18 horsepower. And that pushes the bike's fairly modest 108 kilograms, 240 pounds, to a maximum of either 65 or 75 miles per hour, depending on whether you pick the high or low gearing to match your riding environment. Presumably, if you live in town, you would go for the zippier acceleration of the lower 65 mile per hour top speed. If you do some riding on freeways, then you would pick the higher gearing and the higher top speed, but it would cost you a bit of acceleration off the line. No word on regenerative braking, though, so I don't think there is any. The downside for longer rides is that the 4.3 kilowatt hour battery pack, it does offer a claimed 75 mile range in eco mode, but that comes down to 50 in sport mode. Now, the plus side is that it weighs 30 kilos, 65 pounds, so it's pretty weighty, but it is removable. It simply pivots down, drops onto wheels, and then you can move it indoors for charging if you don't have a garage nice and easily. You could, in theory, take it up to your office, recharge it while you're working. First production bikes, they're due to roll off the California line next year. Question, of course, is what the price is, and in this case, it's $7,800 US, which will set you back around 6,800. Today's exchange rate. What it will be tomorrow, I have no idea. You'll have to watch the market's reaction to Rishi Sunak for that. Clive is looked in. Good morning, Clive. Nice to see you. Hopefully you're seeing it all nice and clear this morning. Now, that was the RIVID. Here is the Tork. If I can get the picture up. It's just one little glitch after another this morning. All right, try again. So this one is the Tork, and this is made over in India, and the bike is built in Pune, and the model name is actually the Kratos. Yes, that's right. And it was first revealed back in January this year. And as you can see, I think it's a fairly standard looking motorcycle with all the sort of styling cues that you'd expect from a modern little sort of sports commuter. And I don't think it's a bad looking machine at all, actually. And this one comes in either standard or R formats. It's the, as I say, fairly standard small motorcycle chassis. You get telescopic forks up front, you get monoshock rear, 17-inch wheels, tubeless tyres, and disc brakes front and rear. The machine weighs in at 140 kilos, which is about 310 pounds. So that makes it sort of round about the same weight as most sort of equivalent 125, maybe a little bit lighter than some. Now, in standard trim, the motor produces a modest 7.5 kilowatt, but that is enough to push the bike to 62 miles per hour or 100 kph top speed. There's a higher spec model which gives you a 9 kilowatt output from the motor, and that goes just a little bit faster, 65 or 105 kph. Personally, I'm not sure why they bothered with the two specs, or the R model does get fast charging for that 4 kilowatt hour battery, which means it can go up to sort of flat to 80% in an hour. With the regular charger, you'll be waiting around 4 to 5 hours. Now, both machines are claimed to offer a real-world range of about 75 miles, 120 in eco mode, dropping to 62 miles or 100 kilometers in city, and 45 miles, 70 kilometers in sport mode. So, yeah, again, it's another bike which should cope with a modest commute, and if I've done my calculations correctly, the base model would set you back just £1,400, with the R model coming in a couple of £100 more expensive. That really is quite a remarkably low price. So anybody who says that electric motorcycles are expensive, we've got two examples. One which is a little bit pricey, well, certainly is compared with the 125, but still affordable, and the other one, the Indian one, which appears to be cheaper than a lot of petrol engine bikes. Now, don't forget, if you do want to support the show, you're more than welcome to do so. I would love for you to come over to coffee and buy me a cuppa over there. If you do that, you open up access to lots and lots and lots, 800 or thereabouts, better biking articles. You can find the entire survival skills archive from 214 through to present. I'm just putting up 2020 at the moment, finishing that off. So do pop over. £3 will get you that month's access, or you can become a regular and a subscriber, and then you'll go open up access to some other content too. Now, 3 weeks ago, you'll probably remember I was delivering my latest Science of Being Seen talk, and that one was an in-depth look at the particular issues where I was trying to explain that it doesn't matter how conspicuous we are, it's absolutely unimportant if we're not visible to the person looking in our direction. Now, that explanation is actually a tough sell to motorcyclists, because basically we've been brought up on a diet of drivers don't look properly and motorcyclists aren't seen because we're not very conspicuous. Those were the conclusions of both the Greater London Council and Harry Hurt's famous report on bike crashes out in California from the mid-1970s, and they have flavoured the way safety has talked about motorcycling issues at junctions ever since. But whilst I was doing the bit more research for that last online talk event, I came across something I hadn't seen before, entitled Psychological Factors in Motorcycle Conspicuity, dated from 2016. So it sort of falls in the middle of my Science of Being Seen research. But here's the author's basic premise. They say that whilst motorcycle collisions are typically attributed to poor conspicuity, improvements in motorcycle conspicuity are not reflected in collision statistics. That, people, is what I have been saying for 20 odd years, ever since I started looking at the data on motorcycle crashes at junctions. Anyway, they did some experiments, which I won't bore you with, but I will tell you that their conclusion at the end of the paper was, quote, in a traffic context, motorcycles are more conspicuous than cars. This seems to be due to the rarity with which drivers interact with them. Now, you can always find ways of criticizing experiments like this. But it is a quite remarkable reversal of the usual thinking about powered two-wheelers having poor conspicuity thanks to something called the prevalence effect. And this is the idea that things we don't see regularly are literally out of our mind. Now, the prevalence effect is actually the basis for claims by organisations like MAG, FEMA, that's the European Motorcyclists Association, and the Motorcycle Industry Association, the body representing manufacturers and dealers in the UK, who all say that if there were more bikes on the road, accidents would actually come down because people become more aware of them, and so they wouldn't crash into them nearly so often, even though there were more bikes to crash into. Now, actually, I'd say that that's a very doubtful premise, not least because there's actually a Danish study which came out also fairly recently that found that on a crash-by-crash basis, drivers do not actually have more collisions with motorcycles than they have with any other vehicle. We just, as motorcyclists, tend to notice, but when you do the sums and you actually look at the collisions, you'll find that motorcyclists aren't more vulnerable at junctions than anybody else. A lot of car collisions, of course, will go unreported because they are minor damage, whereas even a slow-speed collision on a motorcycle is likely to cause injury to the rider and thus likely to end up in the accident stats. So the implication from that is that adding more bikes to the mix simply wouldn't make any difference other than lift the numbers because there are more bikes to be hit in the first place. Now, if we consider data from London, then what we see is that most of the riders actually involved in fatal collisions were actually exceeding the speed limit, some very significantly so. So it does also suggest that it's rider behaviour that has a significant impact on our vulnerability to a collision at a junction. Now, understanding those issues should put us in a better position to be able to do something to lessen the risks. Now, even before I discovered that paper I've just talked about, I did feel that there was far too much emphasis on conspicuity and not nearly enough on explaining the concept of visibility. Far too little time was spent as a result on road safety about talking about the need to use positioning as a primary means of staying out of trouble and to make sure that we are where we can be seen. Far too often, when there is a collision, we find that the rider actually put themselves in a place where they could not be seen by the other road user. And sadly, right on cue, an inquest report showed up in my newsfeed just after the talk, emphasising just how important it is to consider where we are and if we can be seen at every moment we're riding. Now, what happened here was that a truck driver hit and killed a biker. Now, the prosecution spent a lot of time focusing on the fact that the driver had his radio on and was playing it at a volume where they considered he couldn't hear what was going on around him. But the implication of that is if they were worrying about the driver hearing the motorcycle, they clearly he didn't have a sight of the motorcycle. Now, as far as I can work out, what happened was that the rider was to the near side of the truck, riding along in the left-hand lane, while the truck was in the right-hand lane as both approached traffic signals. The lights then changed to amber, but the truck driver didn't slow down. He was intending to pass through the amber sequence of the lights. But as the lorry moved towards the junction, the driver moved to the left into the lane that was already occupied by the motorcycle. Now, whether the rider was stopped or still moving, but slightly slower than the truck, I'm not entirely sure. But what happened, according to the court description, was the front near side corner of the lorry made contact with the rear offside of the motorcycle. And unfortunately, the rider went under the wheels of the truck and was killed. Now, the driver told witnesses at the scene that he did not see the rider or know where he came from. He said, "I didn't even know I'd hit him. That's where I kept driving." The prosecution said that the driver, quote, failed to observe the deceased behind or to his near side despite the mirrors and other features on the vehicle. He failed to allow for the possibility that these observations, even if made, might be inadequate given the possibility of blind spots. He initiated a maneuver involving entry into the near side lane without knowing it was safe to do so. Well, frankly, when you actually look at the blind spots around a lorry, you begin to appreciate that however careful the driver is, however much he appreciates that there could be something in the blind spot, there's not a lot that he can do if there is something in the blind spot. This photo here was specifically set up in order to demonstrate the blind spots around the typical cab of a truck, a tipper truck in this case. Now, the defence solicitor pointed out that the incident lasted just 3 seconds. Now, without in any way blaming the rider, the tragedy really shows us that we have to be riding where we are able to be seen. Now, how the rider ended up in the blind spot wasn't explained. The implication is that possibly the rider came up the inside of the truck and into that blind spot. But when he did slow down, it was clearly traveling more slowly than the truck, and the driver simply wasn't aware that there was a motorcycle there. Why the driver moved from the right-hand lane to the left-hand lane at the lights, I don't know either. Possibly something to do with the road layout beyond where he was turning. But the fact is that we have to understand, we have to have an awareness of where we are in respect of other vehicles. That's what's known as situational awareness. We have to understand where we sit in another driver's worldview. Take a look at this particular vehicle. This is a Seat Altea, fairly modern, fairly representative of little hatchbacks. Just have a look at that picture and notice how the headrests of the rear seats block out the rear window, and how the headrest of the passenger seat is actually obscuring the near side rear window as well. And then look at the tiny mirrors on that and understand that the driver is trying to figure out what's behind him in those tiny mirrors. So I would say the surprise is if we're actually somewhere the driver can see us, if we're somewhere near a car like that. Not that the driver looked and didn't see us. So, okay, as I say, fairly unpleasant story to finish the show with, but it really is important that we don't assume that we can be seen, even if a driver does look for us. And we really do need to think about blind spots and what we're going to do about them. So, yeah, as I say, fairly depressing end to the show. Kevin says, some bikers regard biking as a rebellious, thrill-seeking activity and avoiding focus on safety, which undermines an ethos of fun and freedom. Well, I wouldn't entirely disagree with that. I've been certainly talking about the fact that we do have some responsibility to stay safe on the road, but it doesn't necessarily mean we can't enjoy what we're doing. I mean, I certainly enjoy riding a motorcycle, but I would say that I don't take any risks. I absolutely don't have to. So, all right, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Apologies for the slight glitch at the beginning while I sorted out the new bit of software, which hopefully is an upgrade over the old one. Yeah, don't forget, tell people about ELEVENSES. Try and get some more people in to watch these shows. They're Facebook, they're on YouTube. Much easier to catch up with them on YouTube. That is it for today. As I said, Sunday we may be live, we may be recorded. I'll make a decision closer to the time, but I will try and let you know in time for the show. Right, that is it for this morning's show. If you are out there and about today, it's fairly bright. There are some darkish looking clouds out there. I think the weather is very mild at the moment and is staying mild for the next couple of days. So if you do head out on your bike, do stay shiny side up. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin Williams, and this was ELEVENSES.